Hello, everyone. We invite you to join us for the next few moments for a play called The Centurion. It has been renamed from What on Earth Just Happened. The play is based on a comic book put out by DC Comics in the late 50s and early 60s by that same name. What we have done is we have taken the story and enlarged it. And so we invite you to join us as we go to the cross and visit with one of the men who was actually there. Be blessed, enjoy the play, and have a great Easter because Jesus has resurrected just for you and me. Be blessed. Hello. I don't think you're allowed back here. No, this is where we soldiers have our ready room and do our debriefs. I don't think you're allowed back here. I'm sorry? You want to know about what happened a few days ago. You know, I don't think I want to talk about it. I'm sorry? You really want to know. Well, I have to tell you, it was a very, very long day, but I believe it's a day that changed my life. Well, if you're going to be that insistent, I've been trying to write down some notes to remind myself of what has happened. Well, have a seat and let me tell you what happened. Yes, I'm a Roman soldier. I'm a centurion, which means I'm in charge of 480 men. And one day, the high priest came to Pilate, my boss, and said, "Hey, we want you to arrest someone." Now, Pilate had all of us on high alert because we knew that there might be trouble. But this is something the Jews called the Passover. And I'm not quite sure what all that meant. At least at the time, I didn't. So we went with the high priest men to do what was asked. I thought we were going to go and arrest some troublemaker, some real zealot, a real criminal. Instead, we go to this place called the Garden of Gethsemane. And what do we find there? We find a guy praying with his friends. I never realized at that moment that this would be the longest shift of my life. And from what I'm feeling now, changed my life. Well, it's about 7:30. We go over, get the men, everyone gets ready, we're ready to go. And again, we find a guy praying with his friends. And so I'm looking for the dangerous criminal. Well, one of the guys goes up to him and kisses him. And I said, well, you say, well, we're looking for this Jesus person. And he steps up and says, me. He stood right up to us with boldness and authority, not being disrespectful, but more like he was in charge. You should have heard him speak. He spoke with such great authority. He asked who we're looking for. Again, right after the guy kissed him. Then he gave himself up. Then one of his men, a guy named Peter, I think, cut off the ear of one of my guys. And he turns to him and says, no, Peter, don't do that. And he turned and picked up my guy's ear, Malchus is his name, and put it right back on his head as if nothing happened. I should have known right then that this was going to be the longest shift of my life and that this man was different. Well, we do what we're supposed to do. We arrest him and we go over to Ananias' house. Now, Ananias used to be the high priest and is the father-in-law of the current high priest, Caiaphas. Well, there they question him and he speaks with authority again. And he asked them basically, what have I done wrong? He says, talk to those who know me, who are with me. They've heard me in the synagogue. And then it all began. Things went south there. One of the high priest's men punches him in the face because he thought he was being disrespectful. Annas had him put in chains, sends him to his son-in-law Caiaphas. So we march across town. Well, it's getting to be about 10 o'clock now. So we've already been up all day. So we go to Caiaphas, the high priest. And now we're joined by this group called the Sanhedrin. Several of their members are there. It's kind of their high court. Well, this night, a lot of them aren't there, but they have enough to do some business. This goes on all night. They go out and find people who come in and lie against this man. I still have not figured out what he's done that we had to arrest him. They mock him, blindfold him, and ask which one of us beat you. And I thought we Romans were bad. These guys are terrible. You'd think they'd beat the guy that they're beating to death, that he would revile and fight back and curse and scream. You know what? He didn't at all. It was life-changing for me. This guy is different. Then there was some commotion out in the courtyard. Two of his disciples are out there. The people are warming. They're trying to see what's going on. But this one guy keeps cursing in a loud voice. I don't know the guy. I don't know the guy. I think to myself, man, what kind of friends do you have? Well, this trial goes on, if you want to call it that. They keep going after him and going after him. But I tell you, this guy is different. And so Caiaphas starts questioning him. And the high priest gets really angry about his answers. One of those angers where you turn blue in the face and your neck swells out and you get really angry and you're shouting. Yet our guy is just standing there, quietly answering his questions with such calm assurance. This guy is different. Caiaphas gets so angry, he starts ripping his clothes. I'm like, what the heck is this? Those clothes aren't cheap. But he starts tearing his clothes. And another one says, he's blasphemed. I don't know what blasphemy is, but he blasphemes. And then Caiaphas says, it's better for him to die than the rest of us. I don't get it. I didn't get it. Then they beat him. It was a real blanket party. Where you put a blanket over a person and people just beat you? Then they take the blanket off and they spit on him. Have you ever been spit on? Oh, it's the most vile way of making a person feel less than human. But they did that to this man. He didn't curse them. He didn't cry out. He didn't revile against them. I tell you, this guy is different. Well, this goes on all night. So about 4, somewhere in that neighborhood. They decide he's got to die. They can't kill him. So what do? They send him to Pilate. Well, you're going to go get the governor out of bed? But they do. They go get him out of bed because Caiaphas and Annas have a lot of clout. But this is a quick interview. The governor asked him who he was, if he was a king. And again, he answered with the same peaceful authority. It is as you say. I don't understand this, but this guy is different. The governor looks at him. The man is not fighting the accusations of the leaders. So Pilate decides to let him go. And as he making that decision, he finds out, oh, you're Herod's problem. You're not mine. So he sends him to Herod. So now we go for a third trial. So we go over to see Herod. Herod's a real strange guy, a real party animal. He's Jewish, but he's more Roman than Jewish. He acts Roman, all of that. Well, he's been up all night partying too. But he really wanted to meet Jesus and have him do a miracle or something. Jesus stood there, looked him in the face, and refused. King Herod asked him several questions, but he didn't say a word. He refused to answer him. Like I said, this guy is different. The king had a robe put on him, and they mocked him. And they called him names. Disappointed, Herod sends him back to the governor. Daylight's breaking now. It's about 7 in the morning. And like the governor, I'm getting a bit annoyed of all of this, but I've got a job to do. Plus, I'm tired. My men are tired. You said you wanted to know what happened. Well, I don't get these people. They're trying to kill one of their own. These are holy people, but they won't go into the praetorium so that they wouldn't be defiled. They want to eat some fancy dinner called the Passover, so they've got to remain clean. But you're trying to commit murder anyway. Now they accuse him again and ask that he be put to death. 3 times the governor asks, what evil has he done? And the leaders keep adding more. The governor took the man inside and asked him several questions. You should have been there to hear what I heard. Here's a man who's been beaten, who's been up all night, no food, no rest, dirty, filthy, and bleeding, talking to the governor of all Judea. Yet, understand, I'm watching and hearing their conversation. It was as if they were equals. The man's not afraid, but again spoke to the governor, Rome, with calm, gentle authority. The governor asked him again if he was the king. The man says, yes, but his kingdom's not of this world. In about a half an hour, I hear this man say that he is here to testify of the truth. I've never seen the governor so baffled. But then he looks at the man and asks the question, what is truth? He asks that question twice. And I think under different circumstances, the governor would have believed him. But the governor's in a quandary because he's trying to free this prisoner. But the people won't let him. So he decides to have him beaten instead. Well, that's my job. We went out and we beat him. We mocked him. We're taking out some of our frustrations about the Jews on him. Since he was a king, we played the game of Basileus, the game of a king. We put a robe on him. Some of my men twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head. You're the king. We put that purple robe on him and hailed him and bowed down to him, making fun of him, king of the Jews. We're tired of you guys. But again, I have to tell you, while we were doing this, he didn't wince. He didn't, he winced from the pain, but he didn't cry out. He didn't curse us. He didn't fight us. He didn't even fight back. This man was different. We beat him with rods. We beat him with flagellums, tearing his skin. I tell you, what I experienced that night was different. Different from anything I'd ever experienced. Well, now we go back out to the people again. We've beaten him. We've done what Pilate has said. Pilate says he finds no guilt in him. But here's a man standing there, crown of thorns, robe, beaten. So the Pilate's made up his mind to let him go. I can see his brain working. Excuse me. But just as he's about to let this guy go, the Jewish leaders start again. But then the governor's wife comes out. And she looks at him and says, listen, very quietly, don't have anything to do with this man. I had a dream about him. He's innocent. The governor is sitting there in his judgment chair. He's made up his mind trying to set this man free. The governor even says, Herod didn't find anything wrong with him. Why should I? But then it begins. Roman politics. The governor brings out the men before the people again, and the politics take over. The people say, if you don't do this, we'll tell Caesar. We'll tell Caesar. What's the issue there? Well, Pilate is Caesar's brother-in-law, and they don't get along. Pilate's job is to keep peace there in Judea, keep peace there in Jerusalem. If you don't do what we want you to do, we're going to tell the governor. Well, He says, what do I do with the King of Jews? What do I do with him? Well, anyone who says they're a king is against Caesar. So you've got to kill him. This goes back and forth. Well, they know that the governor has a custom of releasing someone about this time of year. And so he gives them a choice. You want the king of the Jews, or you want this other guy, Barabbas? Oh, you should have seen my face, what happened in my head when he said Barabbas. And then the crowd starts yelling, give us Barabbas. I'm going, no, you don't want Barabbas. Barabbas is an insurrectionist. He's a zealot. Barabbas, I've had to deal with that man. He is mean and evil. He is so mean that he'll kill you just by looking at him. Yet they want Barabbas, not this guy who's done nothing wrong. The governor keeps trying to free him. They want Barabbas. So then suddenly a chant begins in the crowd. Crucify him, crucify him, crucify him. It was like being at the gladiatorial games. You got people cheering and cheering, crucify him. It got louder and louder. And they kept egging the crowd. The leaders kept egging the crowd. Crucify him, get Pilate to do what we want. I'm confused. The governor shakes his hands and stands up and says, you do it. Washes his hands and says, this man's blood is not on my hands. Do it yourselves. Oh, it's getting to be about 8:30, 8, somewhere in there. Time is ticking. So we do the short walk over to Golgotha. I'm tired. All my men are tired, but we've got a job to do. So we take the short walk over to Golgotha. It really does look like the face of a skull. It's where we crucify prisoners outside of the city, right near a graveyard. Since this is early in the day and the Passover begins that night, a lot of people are up early in the city, milling about, doing their morning business. They're out on the streets. So we take this Jesus with 2 other men out. He's tired. He's exhausted. But we've got a job to do. We've got to crucify him. He falls down and people actually come to help him. He even tells some woman trying to help him, no, don't cry for him. But he blesses them. You're about to die. Here's someone who wants to help you. And you tell them no. You bless them instead. I don't get it. But again, I tell you, this guy is different. Well, we could go on our way over to Golgotha. He falls down again. So we grab a guy out of the crowd, a guy named Simon, to come carry his cross. Oh, you should have seen him. You would have thought it was his crucifixion. The other 2 criminals were frightened and scared. No one is helping them. But the guy we beat to the pulp is not afraid at all. But you should have heard these other 2 screaming, cursing, hollering. This Jesus is just silently going. Well, we get to Golgotha, 7:45, 9 o'clock, somewhere in there. And typically, when we crucify someone, we divide up their clothes. So that's what we did. We divided up their clothes because we have to do something while these people were dying. Well, let me tell you what happened when we got there. We were nailing them to the cross. And generally, when men are being nailed to the cross and crucified, they kick and scream and fight you, all of that type of stuff. They call out for their God. Some guys even call out for their mother. It's terrible, excruciating way to die. You die from exhaustion, asphyxiation, and exposure. Sometimes it takes several days for a person to die. The pain is severe. Often it takes 2 or 3 of us to hold a person down so we can do our jobs. Imagine someone sitting on you, holding you, tying you down so that they could drive a spike through your hand until you hit solid wood. You hear that sickening thud that pierces the flesh into the wood. You don't want to hear that, the hammer, the spike tearing through flesh, nor do you want to hear the words that are said, because they call down everything upon you. Sometimes I wish the Persians and the Carthaginians had not invented crucifixion. It's a despicable and terrible way to die. That's why they kick and scream. But not Jesus, not this guy. I don't get it. He just submitted to what we were doing. He let us nail him down, almost like he wanted to die. Yes, he winced and cried, but no curses, no kicking, no fighting, other than having to stretch him out on a cross. I tell you again, I said it several times. This guy is different. I've never seen anything like this in my life, and I've had to do this several times. Remember, crucifixions are public events. And our work was on a hill right outside the main gate of the city. Everyone passes by. And typically at a crucifixion, they mock the people up there because they're criminals. This time it seemed excessive and excessively vile. The Jewish leaders kept insulting him. He's a rabbi, yet you're calling him down. You're giving all these names against him. You're insulting him, telling him to get down off the cross, telling him things like, you could save others, save yourself, get down, save us. You're the king of the Jews. This was vile. This was terrible. Yes, I took part in this. I have to admit it. It's my job. But what was amazing was that the other two thieves, one of them started calling out to him saying, get down off the cross. Take me with you. Save me too. Excuse me, folks. You have to imagine these conversations. They're very difficult. You're hanging there with your head down between your arms. There's no way to support yourself because you can't push up with your feet. You're in dire pain. Your head is hanging between your shoulders. You can hardly breathe. Yet you're trying to talk. At some point, one of them thieves has a change of heart. And he says, this is wrong. Talking to the other thief. Well, they're hanging there for a bit. Jesus is in the center. And then I hear this, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. This man is dying, and he's praying for us. Not just the Jewish leaders, but everyone. Forgive them for what they're doing. More time passes, and insults continue to come, and they get even more brazen. Then one of the thieves, as I said, had a change of heart. And he calls out to the other thief saying, hey, listen, we're getting what we deserve. This man hasn't done anything wrong. And then he turns to Jesus. Now remember, these are hard conversations to do, but he says, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus cranes his neck and says, truly I say today, you will be with me in paradise. I don't understand this. Then I begin to notice that the crowd is quieting down. Then I realize, yes, the religious leaders are there, and they're still hurling insults, but now his family is there. Apparently his mother and a few friends are there. This is unusual, because typically when people are dying, they're just there to die. No one comes to watch. Then Jesus surprises me again. He looks down and sees his mother and one of his disciples. And somehow he gets these words out very clearly and says to his mother, woman, behold your son. And then to the disciple, behold your mother. You are dying. And you ask someone to take care of your mother? I tell you, this man is different. It's about noon. The sky starts getting very, very dark. The sun literally disappears. People begin the panic event, but this should not be happening. How do you have an eclipse now? But it is dark. The sun doesn't shine for another several hours. Excuse me, folks. About 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cries out in agony, almost as if he feels like he's been abandoned. He says something like, Eli, Eli, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which I was told means, my God, why have you forsaken me? Then the religious leaders start again. Let the guy die, will you? They start again. He's calling for Elijah or one of the prophets. Let's see if they come to save him. I was close enough to hear what he said. I heard it with my own ears. A few minutes later, he says softly, I am thirsty. So he put a sponge full of sour wine and on a branch of hyssop and brought it up to his mouth. And he received the sour wine. He cried out this strange word, tetelestai. It's finished. What's finished? And then he says, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And he bowed his head and died. But we didn't know that yet. Later, we found out that the curtain in this place called the Holy of Holies in the Jewish temple was ripped in two. It's 30 feet high, 4 inches thick, ripped from top to bottom, meaning someone above did the ripping. But two other strange things happened, not just the eclipse. But first there was an earthquake. The sun going dark was unusual, but an earthquake? None of us had ever experienced that before. None of us had heard of an earthquake in Jerusalem before. Then the next thing that happened, I'm telling you, I was there. Tombs were open and some of the dead people inside began to walk around, scary. But we were next to a graveyard. I saw and experienced what was happening. Some of my men began changing their minds and began to say, this was a son of God. I think I believed them. But I was standing there when he died and saw what had happened. Like I said before, this man was different. These 26 hours changed my life, but I had a job to do. Then Caiaphas came again. I'm a bit tired of him by now. I'm annoyed. He went to the governor and said that since it's the Sabbath, and the Sabbath is going to begin in a few hours, and it's Passover, Jewish law would not let these people stay up on the crosses once Sabbath started. So we had to hurry up their dying. That meant breaking their legs so they would suffocate faster. So we go to the man on the left and break his legs. We hear him howl. Next, we go to Jesus, and my man says, he's already dead. I kind of thought so. So I took a spear and I jabbed it up into his side, and immediately I was sprayed with blood and water. I began to wonder who he really was. Was he really the Son of God? So he broke the legs of the other man and waited. Shortly thereafter, another Jewish leader came up to me. This man was different as well. He explained that he'd gone to the governor and asked the governor if he could have his body so he could bury it in his personal tomb. What do I care? Well, I came back here and tried to figure out what happened. And then it got me to thinking. It got me to wondering what really happened. I started reflecting on the day. From the time we picked him up in the garden to the time this man named Joseph, I think, Arimathea, came and took the body away. It got me thinking about what I saw. It got me thinking about what I experienced. It got me thinking about what I had heard. Then it came to me, the thought that really changed my life. This was the Son of God, not one of my Roman gods. No, I have no use for them anymore. No, this was God Himself. And this thought ran through my head, through my heart, through my soul. Did I just kill the Son of God? One day, I hope to see Him face to face. And I will fall down at His feet and ask His forgiveness. Because I heard that prayer at the beginning, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. I had a job to do. But in doing my job, I crucified the Son of God. But I also found my Savior. Friend, I'm glad you stopped by because I had to tell somebody my story. And yes, I'm serious. When I see Him again, I know I'll see Him again. I will fall down at His feet and ask His forgiveness because I realized that I'd killed the Son of God. Yet I know that He lives because 3 days later, my men were on station and realized what had happened, that Jesus died on that cross where I put Him, but He rose again that I may have life. I hope you too find the same Savior that I found. Thank you for listening, my friend. Be blessed.